know we could ask for those things.
That'll make my list.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like everyone is present. I will call this meeting to order. The committee of the whole is 6 p.m. All trustees are present. Has the meeting been publicly noticed?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
Thank you. We have one agenda item on our committee of the whole agenda. It is to discuss next steps for committee structure. And how, Rebecca, would you like to go about starting?
Well, maybe just a brief review of what's included within the packet. Try to capture the history of where we've been and how we got to this point. And then attaches also just a sheet listing all of the different committees and different staff and the times that they're at. And then attached to that, President Rosick and Trustee Carpenter and myself and Assistant Village Manager Burkhart had an opportunity to go through and kind of talk through and verbalize amongst each other some of the things that went well and some of the things that didn't go so well with the 4 different types of structures that we had. And as we came to a conclusion in that discussion, I think it was apparent from everyone that we really wanted to go through that exercise with the board so that as a group, you know, you saw our list within the scope of the packet. If there's things that we missed on here that we should take into account, you know, let's talk about them and get them on the radar. And then collectively, after listening to everybody, decide what our next steps should be to pursue whatever the new version of structure is.
Thank you. So I think, Jessica, we had collectively decided, as Manager Evil had said, is if we could just go around and just have a frank discussion on, like, and answer just the 2 questions of, for each committee structure, what do you think goes well or has gone well for committee of the whole, what hasn't, you know, what has been missed out on because of that structure, and then the other 2, correct? So just to go through the 3, we could start with committee of the whole and talk about it each from our own perspective, and then go to standing committees and volunteer committees and ad hoc committees. That way we get everything on the table, and hopefully if we need more time other than this meeting, that's fine too. I don't want to feel rushed, because this is going to be a big decision. Would that be okay to start like that?
I think we should start with the new people. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I mean, I know. I mean, I didn't, but that's, I mean, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I can start for real.
Yeah, we'll start with committee of the whole, and just, what do you think went well, what do you think did not go well, or what has been left?
So as somebody kind of new to the whole process, like I think that it's been a great way to, in a somewhat more casual environment, get to really work intimately with everyone. I do worry that we are maybe not as effective as we could be if we are somewhat dividing and conquering. So I think those are kind of my 2 sort of big pieces, is what has gone well and what has not gone well. I think that sometimes there are a lot of things that maybe somewhat get lost, and I think for sort of like a longer term process, like I worry about you being one person, and that it's, you know, there's only so much that you can manage long term on your, you know, with every other sort of what used to be subcommittees. And so I think for me, what I would love to see is maybe somewhat of a hybrid of how it used to be and how it currently is. So, you know, maybe JP&L doesn't need to meet every 2 weeks. Maybe they meet once a month, and then maybe Public Works meets once a month. And I'm somewhat talking off the cuff, but that's sort of my thought, is maybe there's some way that we could have a hybrid of some standing committees that meet somewhat regularly, but not all at the same time like it used to be, where it was hard for staff and public to be in multiple places at once. So, and then for citizen committees, you know, I think for the most part they're working pretty well. we can.
I apologize
Yeah.
for interrupting.
Sure.
Would you guys mind taking one committee at a
Yep.
time?
Just
Oh,
stop.
sorry,
Would
I
that
just
be-
stopped there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're fun.
Okay. Next.
So we're doing committee of the whole now?
Committee of the
Just
whole.
committee of the whole,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, got it.
I would,
I'll table.
I'd pick up some of the points that trustee Carpenter mentioned. I think for me, what's worked with the committee of the whole is really the learning piece of it. You know, it helps as a very new trustee to see this whole group work through issues, to see how issues are considered, to see how they're worked through, to see how they're kind of turned over as we work through the process. And I think that you know, you can talk about maybe it's a little bit more inefficient, maybe it takes a little more time, but we do have new trustees and new people in new positions. So I think there is certainly some value there. You know, again, what doesn't work or what is an opportunity for improvement, you know, again, it does take a lot of time. It's a big time commitment, but certainly the learning piece, I feel like, at least for me personally, has outweighed that time commitment. Now, maybe going forward and as you have trustees, as you have newer people settle into their roles, maybe it won't be as necessary to surface everything and maybe we evolve. But I think it's been a good structure just in terms of the beginning and as people settle into their new roles. Just my thought.
I think the cow, I mean, I think there's a lot of issues that if we had been handling them in committee, like the transportation plan RFP, we probably would have had like 2 public works committee meetings to talk about that. And so at least 3 of us would have had a chance to, you know, have a more in-depth sort of touch on it, as opposed to talking about it in the cow, where there's all 7 of us and we had, you know, a half hour or whatever. I mean, we didn't, you know, we can only get a lesser depth, I think, in terms of our, you know, and that's an important one. I mean, that's the one that we as board, you know, really want to accomplish this year, and it's an important priority for us. And, you know, if we had been, I think if we had handled it in a committee, we would have had more of an opportunity, at least those 3 would have had more of an opportunity to really have a chance to contribute to it and be part of it. So, yeah, and the cow, we just don't, you know, it's very hard to get stuff done when we all have to meet on everything. I also feel sometimes things come up and they're handled by usually the president and one other trustee, and I don't always end up knowing what the outcome of whatever it was. Like, those 2 people know, but the rest of the board doesn't know. And that's, so I do, you know, I do think the cow has been useful, having 2 new trustees, and it's been useful being a new board and a new president, and, you know, so I think that, I'm not saying, I wouldn't want to, like, completely eliminate the cow, because I think there are things we want to still consider, but, I don't know, I mean, I also think we're all, you know, we're all giving up, you know, a good amount of our personal lives and time in our life that we could be doing something else to be trustees and to be here. And so we, you know, if we're on, you know, I was always really interested in public works. I mean, so I would like to, you know, I don't have the same ability to have the same relationships or the same impact on public works issues that I did when I was on that committee. The other thing that I think we're really missing is SIC. I mean, because I think it's really important. Now, sometimes some years we didn't do much with SIC, and other years we did. But I mean, it's very important that we're looking a little bit farther out.
Let's
Strategic Initiatives Committee.
Okay.
And that committee kind of had, you know, anything that was sort of more like visionary.
Okay.
And, you know, it's, I mean, like looking at the agenda today, I mean, my God, I mean, it's just so much. And then you're like, I don't know if I even want to pull this off of consent because there's so many other things to talk about and everyone's going to be mad at me and, you know, and nobody wants to be here past 10 and, you know, and so it's like we're so consumed with just getting through each agenda. It's really important to have a committee that is looking at longer term issues and longer term planning and thinking on that level. So I think we're missing that, you know, by not having that committee. I did look at a couple other places and, you know, I forget where I even got this, but one place I just want to throw, we don't have to keep the same committees. This place had Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee, Finance, Board Affairs, and Administrative Services, Public Affairs and Safety, Public Works and Buildings. So they just had those 4, but then I do want to have SIC, and then I thought we could have a legislative committee, intergovernmental, that could kind of deal with the school board and other government agencies.
I just want to stop you there, because then we're going to be getting into standing committees.
Isn't that what we're talking about?
We're on CAL, right? Is that
Yeah,
what it is?
committee of the whole.
Just wanna-
Oh, I thought we were comparing and contrasting.
Okay.
The committee of the whole, I think it's been helpful for more routine things and also to check in before we start spending a lot of work on a topic, to at least check to see what the board's position is before. But I think the standing committees provides an opportunity really to get in and work on policies and have a group of trustees working on it, a group of 3, and it also gives an opportunity to really kind of tear it apart and think through it a little more than just having the cow. It also involves more of the board. I think that, now it's the chair and the president, and it seems it'd be better to spread it out and get the input earlier on from everybody. On the cow, that's my thoughts on the cow.
Thank you.
I love the cow. I do. We really do. I think it's been working really well.
Any reasons why?
All the things that are listed here, and yeah, I think, and to Mike's point, it gives us a chance to just decide how important something is and whether we're ready to take action. And so yeah, I don't think I have anything additional that hasn't already been mentioned. That's why.
Do you see any negatives?
I don't. I hear what everybody says. I just haven't experienced that.
Okay.
So I'm not discounting that. It just I'm just speaking from my experience.
Okay.
You stole my thunder. So originally I wanted to go back to the committee structure purely, but I do like the hybrid model that several of you mentioned, although I don't think that will save us time, but it might give us an opportunity to delve deeper into some of the items, just as Trustee Mention mentioned, especially strategic initiatives. That's an area that I likewise agree, we need to bring that stuff back. We need to look out multiple years. And so that's one of the opportunities. I know we had a prioritization and everything but you can't, there are certain things that you can't plan for that you might have to attend to immediately, and I don't think those need to go to the committee of the whole all the time. And I know if we were to restructure, I would love to hear more about what Justina.
So I'm leaning towards what Ann said. I really like the cow. I think that I don't see us saving any time going to committees. I think that it's beneficial because the administration has asked that we we operate as a unit, which is typical in other villages and municipalities. And so I have been reading up to try to understand what Rebecca's bringing to the table, and I do see the benefit of that, and that there's clear direction on where we want to head, so we're not wasting time, which I had seen in the past. So I'm leaning towards, if I had to pick between the two, I think committee of the whole, we're not going to get away from it. I think there's going to be things we need to do as a whole, and there has to be a process for that. Otherwise, we're not going to be as efficient. We're getting to know each other, and we're getting more efficient. And I think we're learning what we need to take time on, what we don't. So it's been very beneficial. The one thing that I see as a negative, which I didn't quite understand for a while, was the concern that I share the concern that it's really hard when the president and the chair meet. Say, I'll give an example like fire, or when we meet on JP&L. I do feel it's more transparent to do that in a committee structure because these people don't, it's public and you don't, I just feel like there's more people involved, more board members, as Mike had said, or Trustee Maher. However, I'm not in favor of going back to the standing committees like JPNL where we had to interview everyone, and we need to be focusing more on policy, and some of the more routine things, I think we could do without, just because we're time constrained, and I think there's so much this board can do together. So I'm still torn. I don't know if it's in our internal meeting, I'm leaning towards hybrid, but we'll get to that after. Those are my two things on Cal. So,
Standing committees.
I don't have a lot of context, I guess, as a new trustee. And, you know, I know what they were. I had attended some, but as somebody who never really participated in standing committees, I don't know that I have a lot of context to say what went well about them. I do feel like you did get a little bit more in depth conversation and in process there, but it's hard to say when I'm not personally participated in them either way.
I feel like just saying ditto, but I'll a little bit more. I'll add a couple more sentences. Yeah, it's hard for me to say because I wasn't really exposed to them. I can say, you know, for how it happens now, the standing committees kind of remind me of sometimes how I practice, which is an issue will come up that doesn't need to go to COW, and we just kind of figure our way through that smaller issue, and then you roll the kind of big policy things up to COW. And that's kind of how it's worked for me on standing committees, but it's, again, I don't really have the context there, so it's tough for me to say what works and what doesn't work. I think it's good to have kind of a trustee touch point for each of kind of the standing committee categories. I think that I like that, but again, I don't really know how it's hard for me to opine on it without a lot of experience with it.
I already said
I pretty much said that. I mean, I think the more complex issues like this parking issue, a committee of the three could work through it more focused and think through the solutions and come forward with some possible alternatives and solutions. That'd be an example. What seems to work good also in finance, that you can get much more in depth in finance and on the day-to-day stuff and looking over the reports and stuff.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with those points, that it's hard to find a way to give everything the level of detail, you know, and review that you want. So that's definitely easier to accomplish with the committees. I've had great experiences and I've had horrible experiences with the committees, and I would say whether it was just the three of us working, but you know, Trustee Bachhorst, Trustee Amenta, and Trustee McCabe, we got nothing done the past year.
What?
I don't know. You have to say, like,
for yourself.
there were some, you know, where we were arguing or we started late or, you know, it was not a productive year, you know. And, you know, and I don't know, so it could have just been something in the water or whatever was in front of us or whatever. So I think it's just, I've had both experiences, and so I'm glad that we tried something different, and I'd be, you know, the hybrid, whatever gets the work done. We all want to do the work, and I'm open to either, so. I just don't think the three of us can work together. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure we could do great.
On that, I think, you're done, that we've evolved really nicely as a board, really well oiled, so I think the cow is working really well. However, I do think there are times that it's beneficial, like I said before, to have the smaller committees, and I differ with you on this on the JPL, not that, I don't think we have to interview every person, but I do think it's nice for us to have at least a discussion or a little bit more of a presentation. As a trustee, as the president, I might feel differently, but you know, we don't really have much exposure to the candidates ahead of time. And I would love to hear, you know, even if I'm not in that committee, which I'm not currently in that structure, if it were to go as you originally laid out, then at least having a couple of people go in depth on that. I think the citizen committees are very valuable in this village. So I think that we all have tremendous knowledge and find those very important. So our ability to weigh in on, you know, the qualifications needed or the variables are essential. And then going back to the whole strategic initiative, I don't even know what it was community relations, whatever it was, but the beekeeping ordinance, which, by the way, this was a very well-oiled.
Yeah,
listen to.
I'm saying-
I don't know
It
the
could have
problem.
been me.
Well,
It could have been me. I am open to any responsibility.
But we, I don't think, if that beekeeping ordinance had come to the cow,
Oh, yeah, no way.
there's no way that would have
Swear to
been.
God.
It took
Yeah.
us, we worked really hard on it, and one of the abilities to do that was that we had a small group that, you know, it doesn't go to say that everyone couldn't have input at the end, they did. But I think it took us 10 meetings, long time.
Long, way
Way longer
Yeah, you
than
were
probably.
able to kind of, you were
Let's-
able to review things, go, just, adjourn, go get more
Yeah.
information, bring
Yeah.
people back.
Could you imagine
bring-
doing that at the cow for 10 months?
Right, no,
We would not probably have beekeeping in Shorewood and other progressive things that we have and which we're known for. So I would hate to give those up. And I think right now we're on a holding pattern for, we've actually accomplished stuff, even though we don't have the committees, that's pretty progressive. But policies, sure, we also have other opportunities that I think we would benefit from the hybrid structure. So. And it doesn't have to be every week. We do like committee of the whole one time, do the other, you know what I mean? So, that's it.
So I have some major things. I have to say that the residents that I've talked to and myself have expressed that the transparency of the cow is very beneficial. That it's videoed, there are minutes. So it's something that we strive really hard to have for committees for a long time. So whatever committee structure we go to, if it's not possible in standing committees because we have them on the same nights or we don't have enough equipment or staff is overloaded, whatever the issue may be, we need to work through that because I do not want to lose that transparency. We've given it to the residents and I believe from the input I've received, they really do enjoy that. And I know that I like the minutes because I missed the last meeting and it was very helpful, to read what went on and I could try to catch up with one trustee or call Rebecca, but it's not the same as a play-by-play. So it really is beneficial in my opinion. The other thing I'm worried about with standing committees is that they're not, that they work if everyone has trust on the board. And I think we're getting there and there's that dynamic of, I think our group has, from what I've seen, worked very well because there's different perspectives and they're balanced. There's no overreaching perspective. And I fear going to committee, that balance may get broken because you're taking a whole board that's very balanced and you're putting it into one. So I would
there's
have,
no way to combine it.
right, and I would really have to think about how assignments are for committees if we go to that because I fear that by the time you get to the board, we're gonna be repeating that, depending on that balance. So, that is my concern of doubling it. I don't see the time consumption being less. I think it would be more, but that's just my opinion. And then the two other things I just want to mention was for JP&L, the one thing that it came to the surface that we talked about because I wasn't at the meeting and Jessica got to handle that discussion herself about the most recent appointments is one of the things I just want to remind people is if you're not, it's very hurtful for some people when they know they're up for a position and they don't get it. And what I see is working very well in this last round of few appointments is it's not just her and I, we also reach out to the chairs of the committees and we work with staff and really you're doing it without them knowing you're looking at them. So there's no rejection when they don't make it. And interviewing, what we found in our discussion, and I don't know that this is true but this is what we found for ourselves, was it's really uncomfortable when they don't make it. Because they know they're up for something and then all of a sudden you have to wonder why I didn't make it when I got interviewed. So that is something that I really found beneficial behind the scenes because we do have the information. Technology has provided us with a lot of avenues, as Jessica and I have found, to really get in depth. And if we didn't know something and we needed to ask, we'd ask the chair of the committee or she called. So it worked well. So I see both sides. I really wanted to share that there may be a benefit of not doing interviews just for the sake of the applicant that doesn't make it. And my last comment is, I really feel strongly about a hybrid for the budget committee. Committee of the whole, I think, works fine for our standard reviews, as long as we budget enough time for our first, second, third, and fourth quarter financial reports. But something like the CDA budget would be so beneficial for this community, and I've said that since the beginning, and I truly still believe that there is a lot to be done in our budget going forward, because it talks about service level. I mean, there's, think about strategic planning, that's where it will occur. And the CDA brings to those discussions for real estate developments an element that we just don't have. And I feel like if we had the right people and the right chair, the right combination on a budget committee, we could achieve more forward thinking and what we're gonna have to do as finances get tighter. So that's all my thoughts. Oh,
All right.
okay, so thank you. We've never spoken really about citizen committees. So
Are
we
we
call,
gonna actually have a discussion? I mean, I'm not getting this, just going around saying our opinions. I mean, if we want to get to some kind of conclusion and make a decision, I think we need to actually have a discussion.
we certainly can, and it doesn't have to be tonight.
Sounds like we're trying to
I'd
get
like to, because
Oh,
I'd like to
gosh.
make a decision.
Well, and I kind of agree with, instead of going maybe into
Sure.
the resident committees, citizen committees, we could, since we've already talked about some things, now have discuss in more detail, since we've already introed.
Let me just give you an example of why we should talk about standing village committees. There is, when we say hybrid, and I've heard that a lot, we may be talking about a combination of standing and volunteer committees. So I just want to, that's just a new option, and we've spoken about it internally. Staff has brought it to my attention. So if we want to segregate that out, we can. I just think it would be beneficial to bring that.
Internally is what? What's internally? You said you discussed it internally.
When Trustee Carpenter, President Rosick, Assistant Manager Brooker,
I'm
and
just
myself.
trying to
Yeah.
clarify. who's
Yeah,
in
just
this
as
discussion.
we
This
were
is
processing,
transparent.
just for.
This is not transparent.
I think I'm comfortable with going through this next, just here, laying it out on the table, and then we can
Is it
go from there.
No, it's just the same thing that we did
Yeah.
for volunteer citizen.
We don't have to go around the table. Does anyone, I have some thoughts on, I call them volunteer committees, just because you don't have to be a citizen to be on the committee. You might have to be a resident, but not a citizen.
But citizen means in a different, like, civic sense, not in the voting
Okay.
sense, or naturalization and citizenship. But anyway, sorry. I just want to clarify that, because I have said, advocated for the citizen, it's not a status.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Do you want to start?
Oh, sure. Just very briefly, because I know we want to get to discussion here. For the citizen committees, what I've seen, I enjoy the engagement with our citizens. I think it brings to the table a lot of really good ideas, and I think the village is much richer for having these committees in place. The one thing that I would boil down, what doesn't work, I kind of boil that down to alignment. And I'm not saying it necessarily doesn't work all the time, if that sentence makes sense. What I'm saying is the citizen committees really need to be aligned all the way up to the village board, and we need to be rolling in the same direction. Otherwise, you might have, citizen committees going one way and the village board going the other way, and then all of a sudden you're not accomplishing too much. So we want to make sure that they stay in alignment, and I think that's always the challenge.
Anybody else?
I think they're working pretty well. Some of them, like I'm on the Parks Commission, they need to get a hold of some issues, but that can expand when you get into the parks plan or an issue comes up.
And just to be clear, I guess it was saying we need to make sure they continue to stay aligned. I wasn't saying there's this huge overriding issue that I'm seeing. It's more of a, this is always going to be the challenge when you have different committees.
Yeah, I think the committees are working well. It gives them it's an ability to move issues forward, like bike, pedestrian safety. That's great, really active. Conservation and other incredibly useful committees. So I think they're all working really well at this point.
I could see some combining, so we don't have quite so many. I think, public space, like we could do public spaces, that would be parks and pet and bike safety. What are the other ones? I mean, I think there might be opportunities for combining so there aren't quite so many.
I actually feel really proud of our citizen or volunteer committees, for our community, just to have so many people who want to volunteer their time. But I do agree that there is some opportunity for maybe some combining, but I do want to be really careful to sort of disencourage, I don't know if that's a word, but I want to keep as many people active as we can, on the committees as possible. So that's my only hesitation about that is, it is really special and unique that so many people in our community want to be so involved. I think that that's a wonderful thing.
Can I ask you a quick question? How many you send out that form with the application for citizen committees every year. Do we have a large, what's the response rate like for that?
Last year was huge. I can't remember the numbers
We did
off
a
the top of my
drive
head.
for the
Yeah.
applications too.
Yeah.
We did a specific
Um, And so after the mailing went out for them, we probably got more than we have in the past. So there is a pool of people right now sitting that are not appointed to committees, so if you needed to, you could appoint very easily. But I think prior to that, there was some gaps where people hadn't applied for certain committees.
Got it.
Yeah.
The chairs will normally, just what I'm learning, and the chairs will normally reach out to other people they know are interested that don't have an application in, and I don't find anything wrong with that, because there are people that are just so hesitant, or forgot, but I watch that happen. So the chairs of committees will say, oh, I know there's these 3 people, and so you'll get applications as there's openings as well. And at first I was like, ooh, I don't know if that's right, but I really don't find any problem with that, because you're still giving consideration to all applicants, and so I haven't found any drawback.
I was on JPNL, I think I've been on it at least 2 years. And a lot of applicants we found last year were people who haven't lived in the village very long. So I think a lot of people move to Shorewood and they want to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to get to know people and get to know the village and the government. And so it's a nice opportunity for someone who's just moved to Shorewood and wanting to volunteer. So.
I would, I really am pro-committee, citizen or resident volunteer committee. And, but I am sensitive to the amount of staff time, when we look at all the assistant village manager listings. So if there's a way that we can, decrease their reliance on staff, I think that would be a great thing to look at.
So I think the volunteer committees are really beneficial, as everyone else does. I do think we're missing budget and finance. That's the one that I do think is missing, and I feel like there are some that we should be really looking at, because the one thing, like ped and bike safety, could be more broad to say, transportation, multimodal transportation. I mean, I just feel like we're missing some components of transit or electric scooters, or so the committee's very focused on walking and biking. So anyways, I just wanted there could be some maneuvering to look at other communities and say, how do they capture more, so that we don't, so those are some of the things I've heard. Same thing with public art. We've had a hard time, public art is one component of public spaces, and so it's very narrow, and so by having a narrow charge, you're putting a lot of resources into that narrow charge, and I think it's just as important to have resources in the beach, and so in our public spaces. So I think that we really should, at this, we have a new board, and I feel like we have a new administrator, and it would be great to just evaluate the missions, and is it accomplishing everything that we can accomplish, to get advice from, advisory advice. I do feel we need to have standardization, so I wanted to work at some point with either the JPNL or the JPNL chair or the administration, whoever it may be, whatever group, ad hoc committee, to look at the ordinances about committees and make them very structured, that are the same, so very uniform. So, because it's really outrageously confusing right now, and I don't want the next president to have to go through this, so I think it'd be beneficial for the residents and us to just go through that exercise and clean it up. And I also believe that when the handbook comes out, it's very, very important that when we create a new committee, it's just very simple one-pagers that are given to committees. If they're gonna be taking notes, if they're gonna be taking minutes, what should be in a minute, like just standard one-pagers that committee chairs and new committee members get right away in a packet, like just in a stapled or something, because I watched the HRC struggle big time. And I think that that would be very beneficial. Some committees that are older, they have more long-standing members, so it's not as important, but just having that is what I really want to focus on. So whatever the board decides, as long as there's some consensus that I can help to, you know, maybe work with administration and others to come up with some standardization. Otherwise, it's very time-consuming and confusing for a lot of people.
So I got skipped.
Yep, go ahead.
So I like the idea of committees expanding if their scope. I'm not sure I favor forcing combination, and I'll say for this reason. So back, you know, in 2007 or so, we got the conservation committee going. And if we had to, and it was a lot of work to get that going, and you know, we evolved and tried a variety of things. But having the flexibility, and we all wanted to concentrate on, you know, we would not have wanted to have our charter be that much greater. You know, we were there because, all 12 of us, by the way, because, or I think it's 10 or 12, I can't remember, but because that's what we wanted to focus on. I think, you know, a lot of the committees, the same thing. But I do like having perhaps the committees look at, okay, can you expand, like the intermodal suggestion that you made for bike and ped safety. But I wouldn't want to take bike and ped safety and combine it with another committee, because then what you get is you have subcommittees. And then it's still the same amount of work, the same for staff and others, because they're going to branch off. I mean, that's what we actually, you know, in ConCon and others have probably done that.
Oh, yeah, because you had those areas like water and.
Yeah, but I think allowing the committees to have the, how would you call it, to empower them, and also let them know that this is what we're looking, you know, whatever we decide on, if we are looking for them to potentially expand their scope to help us more. And maybe then give them the ball and let them see where they're gonna run with it and then come back. You know what I mean? I don't wanna be draconian or too top down in the decision making, is because I think the people who run the committees know their topics better than we as a board.
Do you ever find, this is a question for the group, but do you ever find, like, what I'm noticing now that I'm so involved in the committee's structure is, like, Public Works and some of our volunteer committees duplicate, right? Remember? Okay, so there's only a couple of topics that do that. It's public, as Trustee Menta was laying out for us, but it's really Public Works, Budget and Finance, and maybe Development, I don't, you know, CDA maybe, but I'm just wondering how, and that's the combination of what I'm thinking, like if we haven't had much discussion or anything, but if you think of, well, it would be okay to have some hybrids. It's really difficult. Sometimes you've got your standing committee, like Public Works, 3 trustees talking, then you've got committees over here doing, you know, your volunteer committees. We're not, as Trustee Warren was saying, you know, we've seen that there's been some lack of connection there. And how do we benefit those discussions? Even utilities, like we have public utilities, we have a parking utility, that's not in a standing committee, that's not in a public committee. We've got some topics that if you just laid out topics, you could, you know, if you change the ordinance, it lays out which each committee or standing committees talks about, what topics. That's kind of how I'm assigning things to chairs. But that certainly could be cleaned up. And when I've looked at it, I'm like, whoa, this is weird, because it could go to Public Works Committee, it could go to Pet and Bike Safety Committee, it could go, you know, so that's what I'm struggling with when I look at the ordinance.
Right, it's like what has to go to the board committee versus the resident committee.
And who's
the board-
overseeing it? Like,
Usually boards have committees as a way to get things done for the board. I mean, I think, I mean, the other function of the resident or citizen committees is like with conservation. I mean, they have a ton of expertise in that group. So when we were talking about snow, I mean, it's great to have these people with a lot of environmental background in water who could give us. So some of them are really advisory to us. I think probably conservation the most. But, so there's that function of that committee, but I guess, I mean, I could see there being a hybrid budget committee, if it is advisory to us in that sense. But I do think board committees are just a way to structure ourselves to be able to get things done. Because I just feel like if you think about last year, we had prioritization, which cut into long-range financial plan. So we only had one meeting on that, and then we were in budget. And there really were not any other initiatives or issues that we got to and were able to put forward or to move on. I don't think we, we're all here, we all have things we'd like to see happen. How are we gonna do that? Because we could, at a regular CAL, we'd only have 2 issues, so maybe you'd get on for like sometime in September, I do think if we're going to be able to accomplish more things that we want, that we're gonna have to have committees.
Can I just ask you, I know we're going back to board now, but just to finalize that volunteer thing, for the transportation study, for example. So under a new structure, we were creating, according to this RFP, and basically an ad hoc advisory committee, which is, I am all in favor of keeping conservation, so please everyone, don't think that, I'm just talking in general of the other committees that we have, because it's less focused and active. Conservation is like, they do events and stuff, there's a difference. But, so transportation, we create that ad hoc committee based on our overall board prioritization and who should be on that committee to help advise us. So otherwise, if Public Works, that's where I'm headed, Public Works is still gonna steer it, and then you have this ad hoc committee to advise.
Planning is gonna steer it.
With the planning, but who's overseeing that on the board? It would be.
Liaisons.
I thought that was the conversation I read in the minutes.
That was
but
more technical staff, it ended up being more the technical staff than a citizens ad hoc
Right, which it
committee.
should be.
Oh, I thought.
I mean, it's a
It's
big,
in it,
other
it's
services.
included.
I mean, it's not that citizens can't have input, but
No.
I think that
Oh.
we want our professionals, this is a big deal, we're spending a lot of
Oh,
money,
yeah,
and it's a
I'm
priority
sorry.
that we all have, so.
I misunderstood. When I asked, I thought there was an elder services representative on that committee, so I just thought it
Oh,
was bigger.
I see.
I wasn't at the meeting, so. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say 2 things. One is we should share, if we haven't already, our prioritization with all of the committees and say, hey, these are the things that the board is amenable to. So then they have some I'm not saying that those are the only things, I know we've had this discussion in the past, not their only option, but I might be more inclined to, if I know that 3/4 of the board is gonna support something that I would like to work on, to go for that, knowing that I could, as a resident committee, achieve success in that area. And then what you were saying before regarding or we could also, there could be times that you could put a topic out there and it's like, okay, we can have an ad hoc committee of the existing committees. You wanna send a representative, it's gonna be
Right.
for X amount of weeks over this time. And now, like you said, someone might want to be involved in a discussion on public spaces, who's on public art, or conservation, or parks, right? Like any of those, a lot of these overlap.
They do. And I think that was my point is, so for resident committees, I'm just gonna give you an example, public art. We do not prioritize a maintenance plan to this year. We just didn't prioritize it. We have a work plan in our meeting, the next meeting that's for tonight, but it doesn't have anything about committees. So again, we've got a lot, and so now, where does that leave public art? Do they need to meet every month? Is it more of, and I'm just giving an example, it could be any other committee, but do they need to meet on an as-needed basis? Meaning when the board needs advice on something, when they've come up with a new idea that's come to the board and the board says yes. There needs to be that. I just fear that there's other, like you're saying, if we're focusing on transportation, all of a sudden we're pulling in from our committees, right? So rather than them meeting on their own, they're meeting on these we're embarking on some big initiatives coming up in the next few
Well,
years.
so let's take the ghost train. It wasn't like that was a board priority or a board initiative. Public art got the money to send, the kid just came and said, we're doing the ghost train, we're like, okay.
It did get committed.
Conservation does a lot, they do the fair, I mean, a lot of the committees just do things that we didn't tell them to do, they just decide to do. So do we not want them to do those things anymore because we're not, if we
No.
want to have priorities and to have everyone be aligned, then we have committees out here doing things that are not part of what and we have them submit their priorities and we didn't pick them because we only have 5. So if we just go by the 5 priorities, then
I wasn't
most.
saying that, if that's.
No, no, I'm not just throwing it out for
Oh, I
like
see.
discussion, you know, I mean, because if we're gonna try to be all aligned and coordinated, then we would need to tell these guys, like, we only want you working on things that relate to ours.
That would crush them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, in
Well, but
general
I
as a
think
plan.
the general contention is there's too many, there's too much, and it's too much work. I think that is what I'm hearing from staff.
That's accurate. I mean, that's one of the things.
Too many
that-
committees,
Too many
to
committees,
manage?
too
Oh,
much.
that's what you mean by that, okay.
Yes. Like, there's a lot we have going on, there's a significant amount of time being spent on that, and it's not that we don't feel that it's important. But, you know, when I asked back, you know, I said, what do we do with this, like, 5 years ago? Well, these groups would meet and take minutes on their own, and they weren't staffed. Now, the downside to some of that is that then you would need to provide those avenues for alignment to share, because I think the committees have expressed when we did prioritization, wow, I wish we could come back at this point every year and the chairs could talk to each other and say, what do you have going on? Because there's a lot of synergy between those groups, which I think is amazing. They're this incredible talent pool. I mean, every time I have an opportunity to work with someone from one of them, I just think it's amazing of what that can do for our community, but it's also being realistic with the staff resource being involved in that. And many times in the discussions, there's requests made of staff, or why can't the staff just do this? But they're not seeing the overall picture of what we're involved in, so maybe something can't happen right now, but maybe a good conversation for the board to prioritize later.
Well, let me build on that for 1 second, just because I was trying to say this before. So what I see is a board that needs to be focused on policy at the moment. We have big things. We have transportation. We have housing that's coming up that needs to go to CDA. We have organizational management. I think we identified like 4 or 5 things. Resource management. Those are big. Those are all components to comprehensive plan, which I'm very familiar with. Those will need to be hybrid committees because they're going to need to pull from. Recreation isn't just going to pull from parks. It's going to be standing committee people. It's going to be administration, and it will be, it'll be public spaces. I mean, so resource management. Then you have administration, which is once you've set your policies, who's going to implement and help do the legwork. And I really see some of the committees being that piece as well. Like conservation helps us promote conservation efforts in our community. That's more of a boots on the ground. So the boots on the ground, that's where staff's been real involved, and I think that I haven't heard anything from staff that, that's not a good thing. It's more of the ones where we're not deciding really on policy and how do we get to that bigger level to advise the board. And what I've seen in the past is it's been if it's coming from one committee, it's very specific. It's not a big policy. So we can continue on that, very small policies, coming up from committees, and I'm okay with that too. It's just, we've got a lot of work ahead of us on the big picture items that this is our time to think about how best we can get advice and recommendations to us as a board from some of the experts in our community.
I was gonna say, as far as what Trustee Mento was saying before about, I don't like the top-down model, a hybrid model, sure, but intrinsic motivation is incredible for these committees, so, they're very successful at the things they wanna work on. And maybe, they're volunteers, they're not staff, they're not elected, so there's only so much you wanna force on them. Like, they're there on their own time, we all are too, but whatever, but staff is, that's a different ball of wax. So, and I also want to respect the amount of staff time that goes in managing. So, there's a lot we're talking about here. I don't know if this is where we want to spend all of this time, or maybe go back to the other committee structure. But if we want to look at fewer meetings for the committees, if that reduces the amount of staff time and effort, and that's going back to the ordinances and looking at the structure. And also, maybe it's like I'm just throwing this out there, bi-monthly meetings, whatever, with perhaps every 6 or X amount of months, like a committee of a whole of those committees, you know what I mean? And they could toss out ideas what's working, and that way everyone's on the same, or at least people are hearing the same things. And here's the board priority list. You don't have to follow this, but just know that these are things that they're looking at. However, please feel free to continue to offer initiatives like the Ghost Train. Like that never would have come from the board, right? I mean, but then something that would have maybe is, you know, we had the discussion about the bus benches, right? And there were people saying that maybe the Public Art or the Artist Guild or other, you know, we can put a call out to, hey, we need some, you know, some help on these if you're able, but the management of volunteers is very tricky. So there's only, sometimes you have to be careful what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Well, the benefit of the citizen committees too is like with public art, like, we don't want to sit here and have to debate, is it art, isn't it art?
Right.
Public art, you know, I mean, we need to appoint the right people, but, you know, public art can do that. And then it's the same with HRC, frankly. Like, we don't want to have to debate where should the menorah go and holiday decorations and someone being discriminated, you know, like, frankly, I mean, it is much better to have another group that is not political, that can handle, you know, sticky stuff sometimes. So, I mean, but I guess, I mean, I big picture, I think we have to think about, you know, what we want to accomplish and how we're going to do that and how do the citizen committees fit in. I mean, I think from a board perspective, you know, I agree with Tammy that I'm not sure that, I mean, I kind of could see a public spaces committee and sort of putting some committees, some functions together, but I don't want to mess with it too much because I do think it's been working and it's great to have that engagement. If the issue, it seems like the issue is staff time, and if that's the issue, then
overlap. That was my issue, was overlap.
Overlap of the
Of
citizen
standing
committees.
Yeah, just that kind of overlap.
And expectations. Known expectations.
From
For everybody in their roles.
Like
You know, and
staff or
staff,
volunteers?
committees, you know, I think that committees genuinely sometimes are like, well, where do we go when we have something? What's the appropriate way to take something forward or not bring something
Well, that's where
forward?
this
Or
document.
trustee liaisons. What
There you
is
go,
the
one of the
role,
same
what
things.
is not, you know, just providing, because I'm like, gosh, you were talking about these things, and I was like, oh, well, there's just expectations. Like, and us having an agreed set level of expectations that work with the resources we have to be able to support it and encourage it.
Yeah, looking over the list of the committees, the pedestrian bike safety, as I've sat in on those, it's so specific. I mean, they're talking about bike safety class, you know, as the liaison, it's like, oh, that's great, but an hour of listening to how they're gonna line up the mechanics of the event and all this, it's like, you know, it's not, so, that's one I could think, and they have brought it in, like, Lake Drive and Wilson, they do have a bigger, they could expand their scope, but the other ones seem to be working. I mean, I'm just like conservation, they're real helpful. In the library, we went Parks Commission, when they get a little more energized, there's plenty there. I mean, we haven't had sports and soccer field, that can really be a lot of work.
Where do road projects fit in?
We don't have a committee that does road, I mean, and that
Wait,
was part
that's-
of the awkwardness of
Mhm.
head of bike safety taking on Lake Drive, frankly. That got a little sticky. But I mean, I could see
Or
parks,
Bus routes.
public art, and ped and bike safety combined into a overarching like public spaces committee that dealt with all kinds of issues around that. I mean, it seems like public art is having some difficulty keeping up their group now.
Yeah, I mean, I could see public art combining with public spaces or parks, just because it's typically, I mean, the purpose of it is to be in a public space, and
Yeah.
it, you know, I think those two, for me, could align nicely.
But we're talking about indoor spaces, outdoor spaces, I mean, I would talk to the public arts and the other committees and ask their opinion on this, because I would have a different opinion if I were in public art as a, you know, as a member of the committee, and wanted to be there because I'm an artist. I would not necessarily have the same opinion on public spaces village-wide if we're like using that as like a parks thing. And also, you know, so I understand there's often overlap, but again, this sounds like if we combine these committees and then we change their scope, again, we're taking away, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's a wrong idea, it's something to think about as far as limitations are concerned.
I think I'm just more concerned that we're missing a few. And so there are some very, like public art, we don't have any public art that's not in a public space. So indoor, outdoor, I don't know what that, it doesn't matter, but they work with our administration very closely so that they can place the public art in public spaces. So that's the only reason I would see that working, but you're right, someone that's in parks is not an artist, and, you know, so it just depends on the scope and the, I think the agenda for what that public art committee is supposed to do.
So bike and pet safety used to be very pet heavy and very bike light. This is, you remember that?
Yeah.
And then it's gradually evolved, and I think it's probably the opposite now. So combining those two, you see that it depends on who's on the committee and what the, you know, the dominant voices are.
Well, I wouldn't combine those two, unlike what has been said. That pet and bike safety to me is multimodal. Like, it just needs to expand its scope. We need to catch bus routes. We need to catch, you know, public transportation, roads. Like, it just needs to be scooters when we have scooter issues. And that fits really well with public works, but I don't know if that combination is good.
You know, I just wanted to have one quick thing. One committee that we need that we don't have is celebrations. Like we need a volunteer. Every year Tyler has to find someone for the 4th of July, and this, you know, it would be great to have.
Public spaces.
It would be great to have a volunteer committee who's working on the bike race, the 4th of July, the concerts, and just, you know, people who like planning
That be a
things.
subcommittee of public spaces? The only reason I say that is it's better to have one committee and then have
I
subcommittees.
just wanted to get it out before I forgot.
Celebrations gonna be.
City of the whole and
Sure.
Yeah, let's-
I guess my question might be a really simple question, but are we talking here, are we trying to have less committees, period? Or are we trying to have less committees because we want to add a couple? I guess I'm trying to figure out where we're getting to here.
I think everyone has a different motivation at the moment. So, from everyone's perspective, that's why I wanted to listen to hear what people are thinking. I've thought about it a lot. Mine's probably different than other people, and so I'm more interested in how can we organize our committee structure, both standing and citizens, to be the most efficient and get the most what we need at this moment for the next, you know, for a long range plan. And so that's where I come from. And also when we get to standing committees, the conversation, I do believe that, again, like I said about budget, I'm not sure if we go to standing committees at the 3 trustees. I've been on that committee for 3.5 years, and the whole time, and we didn't get to the things that I hear the board wanting to get to, which is shared services or exploring priority budgets, you know, prioritization and budgeting and more capital planning, and those are the things that, like the CDA, I really feel strongly we could benefit from some strong outside partners in those discussions. So that's where that hybrid comes in.
So Trustee Bachurst hit on a point that I just want to echo, because it's a concern of mine. We have really talented committees, and the chairs, just from the brief amount of time that I've had an opportunity to work with them, they're really smart, intelligent problem solvers. And I think it would be beneficial for our group to meet with those chairs and say, here are the concerns that we have. We're problem solving.
Help us.
Yeah, you know, I know, but this group could also have reservations with that approach as well. And I understand the reservations, but I just see it in a really good group of people, and I'm like, I am sure there is something that we have not thought of that may make that easier.
I like that idea a lot, and it's something we've talked about on the board for a long time, of getting all the get all the players together.
We did that.
We did that
Right, but
occasionally, but yeah,
Yeah.
we
Oh, we,
regularly.
oh, you guys did?
And,
I did,
and
2
just-
years ago we did.
And it's problem
Oh,
solving,
okay.
but it's
Just one time.
opportunity building.
Okay.
So you throw out the problem, and if some people see it as a problem, some people see it as an opportunity.
As
And
long
then-
as we're on the same page of what the outcome is supposed to be, because if you don't have something to propose,
To what's his
to
point?
build on,
What's the outcome?
then you're just gonna have this, which is fine. I just wanna be clear
Yeah.
that then we're just having just an open discussion.
Yeah.
And people are, have a tendency to want the status quo. I don't think
course.
anyone's gonna say, any chair of a committee is gonna come in and say, oh, yeah, you can go by
Right.
me with something else,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna
My
happen.
I think it's a board, I think we need input on something we might be thinking about.
Sure, good point, good point.
And if there, it expands and grows into something different, that's fine too, but the open-ended, what do you think?
So I would propose that we take care of the, making the workload manageable,
Mhm.
for keeping the committees the way they are, looking at ways to reduce the reliance on staff, to have those, and then as a secondary look at, maybe combining or, some of these other ideas. So I'd like to, and then as far as the committee of the whole versus standing committees of the board, I don't know if you wanna get back to that tonight in order to have some resolution to trustee Menda's point.
Sure, let's go back to that.
Well, why don't we ask each committee to, in addition to the chair, ask someone to serve as secretary and take minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That'd be a great
pretty
place to
much.
start.
Yeah.
And then the chair can just have a phone call if there's something he needs to communicate to Tyler, like I'm the trustee liaison, we'll be there. I also think we should have trustees reporting from committees. I don't always go to conservation or library, but if we go to a committee, we should report at the board what was discussed.
It'd be nice to have it on the agenda because
Yeah.
I forget to report.
Yeah.
Me too.
So I'm a huge violator of that.
And that could be part of the committee's charge is, I'm going to be reporting back to the board. What would you like me to report back? Not my opinions on what happened here, but what are the essential items that you would like to be conveyed to the other board members? Or please come and we have at the beginning of the, whatever, each committee member can give 5 minutes once a month or every couple of months. Hey, that's not a bad idea.
Right, I mean, I'm just, because they are gonna report, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to make it simpler.
And then let's
I don't
empower
think
them.
the chair is gonna wanna, I don't think they're gonna, we have to be here at the meetings,
No, kind of report.
Yeah, I think the liaison, that's kind of our job.
Yeah.
You can always switch it and say you can, quarterly, you can come for 5 minutes and have the audience of the full board and all the staff that are here, instead of reaching out
Do
to
you mind if I
individuals.
offer a suggestion to that?
Sure.
So, in my previous community, we had a whole piece of the agenda that listed all the committees, and we would link the minutes, if there were minutes available, so that it was very transparent. Anybody in the packet could click on those minutes, and if there was an update, that other person at that time gave the update.
Yeah, that was,
If they didn't have one, they would say, see attachments.
uh-huh.
Just, it's something that had worked, so I wanted to throw it up there to you guys.
Thank you.
I would
There's certain committees that do, Plan Commission needs, and DRB probably needs somebody, right?
Plan commission by stat, by
CDA.
ordinance is supposed to be reporting back.
CDA is, I'm just trying to think which ones need staff to be there. Those three certainly.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
Elder
library, yeah.
Services Board.
Yes,
Be
we do.
present.
Well, yeah,
Most of these
Rachel
people.
and
Police
Elizabeth
Commission?
know.
There's chief, I'm sure, wants to be the police commission.
But I guess maybe she's saying you don't need someone at the conservation.
No,
Maybe there's
no, I think,
Head and bike safety,
Head and bike.
conservation, public art,
Right.
what else?
right.
What else?
HRC, well, isn't that a board? Are you guys members, or are you, who's not a good?
I'm not, no, trustee McKay.
I'm not
I
a
just
board
don't.
member.
Okay. So, okay.
It is very helpful to have her on the board, though. I mean, to have her on the committee, like to have a representative of the board on that committee.
But
I
I'm
must
talking
say.
about staff. Do we need staff at HRC?
Yeah.
Well, they're
That one.
their goal is to meet quarterly, so,
Yeah.
we were gonna look at an alternate,
Can I, may I?
Yes.
Yeah, as a staff person that coordinates some of the groups, let me just give you a really good example that I think will help this discussion. So, because as much as I'm committed to the committees, I don't mind being there, and I'll kind of summarize my thoughts at the end. But like a really good example, so I ended up missing a conservation committee, for instance, and it happened at that meeting, they talked about the Shorewood Foundation Shark Tank. And they ended up deciding at that meeting they wanted to put together a proposal for a parking spot in our parking lot that would be allocated for electric charge service, where it would be designated for just electrical charge, right? Now, I wasn't at the meeting, so I didn't hear the idea until after they submitted the proposal and actually got the preliminary approval from the Shorewood Foundation. And then we kind of had to interject to really think this through. And this is a perfect example of a committee that had a great idea, but probably was not a priority of the village, and it really had to be thought out a lot more because there are a lot of obstacles involved. And with me being there, I could have said that from the beginning and really helped that, but because I wasn't, it really hurt the process. So I think for someone like me, like the work commit or the time commitment, it can be done. But I think with some of the groups, like the focus right now has to, I mean, I would appreciate a discussion about some of the focuses, because I think some of the groups are having similar conversations and it could all happen in one group. And I think the other thing is I hear, just from a staff perspective about standing committees, the difficulty of standing committees with y'all was the fact that you were having 2 meetings at once, right? And I remember there was times I had literally 2 agenda items at the same time in different rooms, and I couldn't be at it. So the only solution to that is for you to have standing committees at different times, which is more meetings. And with someone that's already going to a lot of different citizen committees, now going to all those different standing committees, that's where it's even going to grow more from a time perspective. So, you know, that's just kind of what's going through my mind. I don't want you to think that, like, from a staff perspective, that we don't want to attend the citizen committees, because I think there's a lot of value in us doing that. I just think what would be helpful is to maybe take a look at their scope and see if there's a way that we can rework that a little bit, so we're not duplicating some of these conversations.
Okay, Lieutenant Liebenthal goes to HRC. He's staff, okay? Conservation, that whole issue, if Joel were there, he could have done that. You know, there's no reason that you need to be assigned to 6 citizen committees.
So I do have a question going on, Tyler, so we just want to go back to standing committees really quick. The main hang up from 6 months ago, or whenever we started, was we didn't, from what I heard, was we didn't want to have them on the same day. So then people started talking, we started having discussions about 2 things. One is we could alternate, you know, one meeting of the month have a few committees and the other have the other. And then the other thought was we could have them on a different day of that week. The other is, there were multiple variations, and I think we got to the point where, Trustee Maher, you felt very strongly that we didn't want more meetings, more days involved. And so we kind of got stuck at that. So, and it all goes back to also transparency and how much are we able to, like, have the citizens, you know, if you're meeting at the same time. So if we want to start there, that's probably the biggest obstacle to going back to standing committees, besides time commitment and overlap.
I like the idea of if we could manage the workload to have one set of committees meet the first of the month and then the second set of committees meet the third of the month. So we don't have that duplication issue, or the simultaneous meeting issue.
And administration had mentioned maybe it's ad hoc, like whenever we need them.
Exactly. That was, I think that's the big thing. And that was true. You know, there were times where we didn't need to be here till 7 o'clock because there were no JP&L issues or something. So I think what I've really appreciated too is that I know, you know, 6 o'clock on Monday is not, oh, it's 5:45 this week, and you know, even though it's a half hour here and there, I think it's nice to have, it's like, this is the amount of time we have, it kind of keeps us honest. in terms of working, not but just like keeps it accountable as far as the time management. So if we could have an hour and a half the first Monday and an hour and a half the third Monday and split the work across those two, I'd like to try that.
Any thoughts?
There's been a number of things mentioned about the budget. I really think we need to find, long-term capital plan and stuff like that. We really need to get that up and running. If it's separate times.
I totally agree. Are you okay with the hybrid, like having?
Not really. I think it's a board responsibility, and we aren't even operating that committee as a board now, so I think we should start with taking care of our own things.
I mean, Whitefish Bay has a separate Public Works Committee. I think it meets on a Thursday, like monthly on a Thursday. I don't know if it's every other week on a Thursday or monthly. Because, I mean, a lot of our agendas are public works stuff that are relatively, that are routine, that maybe we don't need to get, everybody doesn't need to get into it.
And that they would just meet once a month on a.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that is, is that puts Leanne in a position of really having to, plan ahead, because she's only gonna have, I mean, I guess she could put it on a regular agenda too.
So I'm focusing on our big initiatives that are coming up, right? Capital planning would be one of them.
It's not one of our
Not yet,
initiatives.
nope.
It's not,
I
we
know,
didn't
I'm just saying,
prioritize it.
correct. I'm just saying that has, is a big initiative to do capital planning overhaul. So, transportation is big, so we just have the transportation with Public Works, and it just meet once a month, correct? So we have once a month that we'd be meeting on a transportation plan. Is that sufficient? I'm just giving real life examples. Is once a month for budget committee sufficient for capital planning? I don't think it is. I personally don't think it is.
Well, I would love to have a more, a separate capital planning process before we get to long-range financial plan, and I'm talking about bonding and the finance part of it. And that's what we talked about at the end of the long-range financial plan, so I would love to do that.
Do we do that at committee? I'm just trying to go back to some things.
We're never gonna do it if we have to do it in the CAL. It's never gonna be agendized, it's never gonna happen.
I agree. So are we gonna do that, so is your recommendation to do that in a standing committee or in a committee with technical advisors on it as well?
I think we need a standing committee, but, if it's a monthly standing committee, I don't know. I mean, if they're at separate times, then how do we keep them from becoming the cow? I guess maybe that's not that big of a problem, but I think it's a lot easier to have a committee, which is a smaller group of people, discuss an item and, come to our own consensus and bring that forward.
I think everyone's kind of in agreement with that for certain big issues, but I'm just trying to walk us through it for a big issue like transportation or capital.
My personal opinion, there weren't that many times that things were simultaneous, that if we have the committees going at the same time, we should be able to agendize them, so one staff person isn't needed at both places at the same time. I mean, I don't, it's a disadvantage to it, but then we have to think about how we're gonna get, what we're gonna get done and how we're gonna get that done, and I just think it's a lot more efficient to have bi-weekly committee. I mean, we might not need JP&L, we might not need, I'm not, and I think we need to talk about how we organize our committees, because some of the committees were, what really was community and business relations, I don't even know. Why was parking and public safety and not public works?
That's in the ordinance we'd clean up, correct,
So, but yeah, I don't know. I do think we need to get back to committees, and we need to start agendizing among ourselves, talking about more things. But a lot of those things are not gonna be, for example, prioritization. I think it would be great to have an SIC committee talking about what went well and what do we wanna change in prioritization this year, because I personally don't wanna repeat that process.
I totally agree. So, but my question is, it will get back to committee of the whole. I don't know if we have a majority that's in favor of simultaneous committee meetings at the moment. So if we don't do them simultaneously, we're basically if for big things like the transportation plan, or the capital planning, I mean, the benefit of having a committee is the others don't have to be there, right? So that is a positive for those that don't, on the board, that don't want to participate in that if they don't need to. But the downside is I'm gonna guess that there's gonna be a lot of us there, and we could just do that for committee of the whole.
Can I ask a clarification on the transportation, because we're using that as the example? My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, was that was gonna start under Public Works. Or at that time, we didn't have standing committees, but Wesley had graciously volunteered to run point. And everyone else was also appreciative. And then there was a thoughtful consideration about different stakeholders that were involved that went outside of the realm of the Public Works Committee. And how were those stakeholders going to be eventually be engaged? Was that more on a working technical level, to Trustee Bachhorst's point?
Yeah, so my take back from last meeting was that Trustee Warren would lead as the Public Works Chair, and then staff members, whether it's planning, development, elder services, police, whatever, would guide the process through to make sure that we're getting the output that we're wanting.
Okay.
And then when we got those products, we would push it out to other people to review it. So if there was a component, that was necessary for, the bid to see or to weigh in on, the internal technical advisory group, I believe we ended up calling it, would push that out for review or for comment. And then the public meetings is where those comments would be compiled.
Yeah, I viewed my role as more kind of logistical and making sure that we were getting the deliverable that we had requested in the RFP. And then when you get down to recommendations and options, that's when you start to take it for public comment, you bring in the board. So I think that I viewed it as kind of almost a two-phased approach.
I think we have that on our agenda, because from doing 1,000 comprehensive plans, there may be a more concise group that can help us, other than just staff. But yeah, so if I'm just walking through it, it would be Public Works then the standing committee would be Public Works, and we would meet on it. And then what? If it's not an ad hoc group, if it's standing committee of the board, who do we assign it to? How do where does that fall?
We were going to set up a technical committee that was going to guide the study, but, I was going to pull it from consent because I feel like that the board does need to have more involvement, and I think we discussed more board involvement than a single board member being, so we need to figure out how to have more opportunities for the board to be involved as the. So, I think someone needs to make a suggestion, or we need to start talking about this, specifically. If we do want to change some of the budget and prioritization, then, we probably need, a 20-minute, I think we need finance 20 minutes every time. Maybe we need Public Works as a separate meeting. I don't know what, I know Tammy has some legislative things she wants to bring up.
Make a suggestion.
Public affairs, safety, development planning. I liked this combination: development, planning, zoning, finance, board affairs, admin services. So that would be like a personnel committee, which we don't have. Public affairs, safety, public works, and buildings. So buildings would be what's happening with the police station, what's happening with the fire station. I think we need to have more eyes on those projects, SIC, and then intergovernmental legislative. We might not need SIC or legislative.
You're forming standing committees, I understand that, but we haven't even gotten to the basic of, do we want to go back to, so my recommendation, from everything I've heard tonight, where we are in this, because we all have different views, and so I didn't get a consensus feel, is that we stay at committee of the whole for our standard stuff, because it's every single meeting. And then we do ad hoc committees with the chair leading them, and another, one or two other, maybe we say 3 trustees have to be on an ad hoc committee. But anyways, that's my suggestion.
And I thought that a lot of us liked the hybrid model too, so and then Anne just wants the cow.
Every time you come into a room now, we're just in the same mood.
I just don't know how to structure coming out of this meeting tonight. That's what, so
So we have a big project going on right now, that's gonna be at the cow, and then we have smaller projects that can be in subcommittees. And we say at 7 o'clock, the cow gets together, from 6 to 7, we have standing committees. And then we have a dedicated time that the committee as a whole is there, and it starts at 6:45, I don't know, depending on the issue.
Could I add on to
It would
that?
be hard to,
Just, and this is, I'm
you have to figure out
brainstorming,
which side
right?
is to what.
But, so, in the ideal world, you know, once we're all done with this, you'll have all these buckets and know where everything goes. But why not just start with what you know and focus on the areas where you need it? And then, you know, so I'm hearing a lot of budget and finance, and I'm hearing a lot of public works.
Yes.
For the things like transportation and parking, that may merit, you know, ad hoc, or put it in under public works, or however you guys wanna work through that, but why don't we start and try to work with it, with what we know needs to be done. And then, you know, eventually, once you find what is working, the rest will fall. I mean, it's been my short period of, like, experience where the rest will fall into place.
Well, if we go back to standing committees for what we know, I have I mean, we really do not agree with JP&L on how it was structured before. So the content that would go there, I thought was very.
Yeah, there's a lot of good
And
suggestions.
personnel, I like that idea, but that is administrative. I mean, personnel is not under the board, and so there's really no reason.
No,
we-
JP&L is judiciary personnel and licensing.
I understand, but the board makes a policy, and then the administration, personnel falls under administration.
Oh, the human resources manual, like, I mean, there's a
That comes to the board.
I mean, well, but you can have a more substantive conversation about it in committee. I mean,
We just have
the
to define that.
The issue that came up
We
with the
did do it
public
in
arts,
JC.
the issue that came up with public arts committee, would have been great to have a couple of people who were talking about it instead of just two. And then the rest of us don't know what's going on. I mean,
Yeah, so on JP&L, you need it though more than quarterly, because I hear you on the the human manual, or the resource manual, we do that on purpose once a year, we collate up until that point, you know, like, that's something known. I don't know, I think we could work through that. I think that
what
to
do we
everyone's
have to
point.
talk, I mean, I'm not sure what we have to talk about in the CAL. We're not talking about transportation, that's a technical advisory committee, that's not the board, we're not talking about the board, that, in CAL. It would have been great to have talked about that a couple more times in committee and had more opportunity to have input into the
Sure.
RFP, but apparently that opportunity is gone.
Well, the time frame would be the same. So again, we're used to taking a long time on things. We can do that in CAL, we can do that in committee, but if you stayed with the time frame that the administration has put forward, I'm just saying, neither of that could have happened in either committee. You either stay with that time frame or you can expand it. We could do that in CAL. It's just that if you wanted to get the RFP out at a certain time, which has been laid out for us, we couldn't have those in-depth
I mean,
conversations.
I think SIC needs to be, start and come up with a proposal for how to do this. I mean, so I would say for our next meeting, have SIC meet and come up with a proposal on this. Finance to start talking about, I mean, SIC I think has to start talking about prioritization. Finance should start, some budget. Public Works is gonna have things because we have things every time. And this Kensington parking thing could have been,
Right.
somebody could have worked through that in committee.
Dumb question, because I couldn't remember all the order. Are the same people on Public Works also on finance?
Yes.
Yeah,
Those two are the
so-
same. So there's merit for meeting on the first and then the third. And then, so you all have had experience with SIC, I have not. Is there any merit in just having that reviewed by who's on JP&L after hearing from this discussion and bringing forth, to your point, a suggestion, because they do deal with appointments to all of these different?
I just think that JP&L,
I don't
I'm
know
gonna be
who's on
involved in whatever
JP&L
committee
either.
it's assigned to because the president.
Oh, it's all the same, oh, it's the same, oh, okay, sorry, I didn't, okay.
Now you're taking strategic initiatives job and
Yeah,
putting it
we
in.
got
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that
You got
the
the
same
same
people were on all the different groups.
Yeah.
Really?
Again, sorry.
No,
Okay.
right. So and that's the other conflict here. I
Yeah,
just
it's-
want you to
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I have no
is
problem with
it's
it.
always been this way, it's going to come down on me and Rebecca, because it's like, well, why are we so heavy and these people aren't getting, we're not getting anything, and now we have.
Benefit of
I
the
could
job,
care less
Allison.
about getting things.
Take it. We'll just
And I
put
want
them
to be
at 7.
clear, just to be transparent, that I will be involved in this, whatever committee gets it, because the village president does appoint to standing committees, so I want to be able to assist with that structure, as has been in the past, so.
Assist with when they're running their meetings, or what?
No, if we're talking about coming up with a plan for committees. Isn't,
Oh, you mean the strategic initiative, which
Yeah.
if we went by
Yeah.
what she said regarding having
Well, I mean, another
SIC.
suggestion is like maybe each of us as chairs could send an agenda suggestion for our committee to Rebecca, and the two of you, whose your role is to represent the board in putting together an agenda with the village manager. So you will have, you know, what I'd like to talk about in finance and what everyone would like to talk about, and you can, you know, make it a committee or, you know, whatever. But I mean, if we have committees, we're gonna get twice as much work done as, you know, sitting around in the cow. I mean, I mean, some things, maybe a cow once every couple months, or if there's an issue that really needs it. But I just find it a lot of talking and not getting much done, and I'm not enthusiastic about it.
Should we, I'm just throwing this out here because it's 7:25, so I'm not married to an idea here, but should we, would one option be to try Tammy's suggestion?
What is it about?
How at 7 or whatever, and then.
And then
6 to
starting,
7.
committees for, standing committees for,
as long as they
Budget
don't
and
overlap,
finance and
whatever's
public
needed
works.
that day for standing committees, but I wouldn't.
well, one
overlap
would have to
them.
be on the first Monday, one would have to be on the third Monday.
I always thought that was a workload problem, but, and if you ask Tyler, we've had this many discussions on this, so.
So what would be the alternative? I think we have to get to
Okay,
something.
yeah,
I know,
that's-
just-
So we
Yeah,
have
sure.
the 3 let's say the 3
Yeah, we
committees.
get together and
We get
figure out
together,
what
we've
are
got
we
an
trying to
hour
do.
for
All
our
of our
3
meetings
items,
would
we
start
each
at
get
like
20 minutes
7:50.
of what is equitable based on the topic, and
And we would
that's it.
start at like
Retreat.
5.
Right.
I get 18.
Yeah, and then the
So-
other 3, same thing, and then at 7:15, that night we might not have a cow discussion, so then we get more time in committee, which is great. Or we might need more on the cow side, and so we're like, oh, you have less time in committee.
We need minutes, we're not gonna be able to videotape, and I don't think staff appreciates having to go
I mean,
to
it
committees.
depends on
Yeah,
what
I
you put
think
on
we
the
want to
agenda.
eliminate the simultaneous
Yeah, I
meetings.
don't.
Okay, then I
too
guess,
much
I guess.
to talk about.
Whatever.
Think about the 20 minutes for
You
each
know, we have to
committee.
make
That's
tough
only like
decisions.
one
We
time.
can schedule
no,
ad
I mean,
hoc,
like,
like
budget
whatever
and
committee is
finance
needed,
meets one on the
as chairs,
first
can- like you said,
Yeah.
send in your things and we'll
First would be
schedule
on
that.
So,
Third.
Oh, so we have
trustee
an
Menton,
hour
you
just
wanted
on
to
one
do,
committee.
Yeah.
do you think simultaneous meetings would work?
So to clarify, what I was suggesting would be, budget and finance would meet on like the first Monday for an hour.
Mhm.
And then on the third Monday, Public Works would meet for an hour. So there were multiple committees, but then
Right.
you had the cow for a buffer in case there was something that was cow
Worthy.
related. If not, you wouldn't have to have it.
What about the other committees?
Strategic initiatives.
You would just start with those 2, see how it worked.
But what,
We don't have
What
any
if we-
committees, we don't have
but
any.
then the other committees wouldn't have.
Yeah, they have no opportunity to
Okay.
do any
Which
work.
is fine.
No, because
Oh.
she's, the way
No,
they're
I
structured
think-
now,
Okay.
we don't have to keep them the way they're structured.
We could do it as committee of the whole, one Monday we do budget topics, and the next Monday we, you know.
I mean, all that's doing is saying committee of, if you don't
Good,
wanna
Rich.
go, you don't have to,
Right.
but all that's doing is saying, oh, we're gonna have cow when we talk about budget and cow when we talk about public works.
Correct.
So I guess we have cow no matter what. I guess that's the,
Yeah,
that's the
no, it's not
conclusion.
how I initially intended.
We spent an hour and a half talking, and we're right back
Yeah,
to
this
where
is
we
it.
started.
Should
And
we
this
take
is
a
my
straw poll?
objection to cow. This
I
is
mean,
my
now the
objection
cow, we
to cow.
could like decide that we need budget and finance to do some work, and you,
I mean,
the
someone
three
else-
of you can get, you can get together and set up a time to
Giddy
meet
up.
and work on some specific task.
Great.
I mean, in SIC, the 3 committees, we might get together and work on.
And sign it down.
So what about if we just, okay, so let's let go of cow, put cow on the side. How would you like to do it so that we don't have simultaneous meetings? Because that
Yeah,
seems like that's the
that's
number
fine with me.
one deal breaker, like, that's the non-starter.
Yeah, that's.
So what would be what would be an alternative, so,
I mean, are we organized to, you know, I stated when I ran, I'm not running again. You know, I'm here for 2 more years and that's it. There are things I'd like to accomplish, given the 6 years I will have put into this. So I feel very strongly, the things that are important to me that I'd like to see happen, I'm not gonna be able to get happen in CAP. If we have to have simultaneous meetings and that inconveniences someone because they can't be at every single moment of every discussion, that's not my priority. My priority is as a legislator and as a person who put time, money, and energy and involved a great number of community members to get me here to accomplish something. I want to accomplish something.
And I want to state that I think this board has accomplished a lot in the last 6 months, so I don't want to overlook that. I
We
think we've done a
accomplish
lot.
prioritization and budget.
I'll put a list together for the next meeting, but I don't want to down anyone here. I think that we've done a lot together.
And we've had to put a lot of time in the front end, but I totally agree with what you're saying. I have a lot of initiatives that I'd like to accomplish.
And then that the overriding theme of that is, while there may be a lot that you want to individually accomplish, what did you agree upon as a board?
Correct.
Right, but if we spend every cow meeting talking about
Yeah.
the process and we come back to square one
Hey,
for the
you guys
most
can
part.
give us
yeah.
authority. I mean, Rebecca will go write it, but
I-
this
no,
board.
that's
That's
not what we're saying.
exactly the point. That's
No.
exactly the
No.
point.
But that's why we're
We would
talking.
like to do something. We would like to contribute. We would like to have
We would
more
like
of a
you guys
role.
to trust us that you don't have to be at every committee meeting. And I think you should be able to do that, and I think you'll get there.
I'm not unwilling to trust.
So, I
Oh,
mean,
am I like?
Oh.
no, I'm not
Oh,
saying.
okay.
I'm just saying, like,
I'm like-
Tyler, we have you.
I would very
One-
much like to
One room
trust.
here, one room there.
I mean,
I
so
don't-
why
I-
don't we have Rebecca? Why does this seem to
Okay, so then that's not an issue, we can just go with standing
Yeah.
committees.
Yeah, I'm not voting to stand on the same day. I've never been in favor of that, and I do not think it was efficient, and we've had this conversation, so I just vote no, but that's fine, if you want to do that.
Just as a reminder, I was suggesting only one committee meet on one day. Okay, just to try it.
But
You're
that's
gonna have
not
things
enough.
come up all the
That's-
time.
Okay,
A couple
all right,
sort of
okay.
comes up all
Okay.
the
Why
time.
don't we just schedule it for a vote, Rebecca?
What about one committee?
Whether we're gonna do standing committees or no standing committees, we don't need discussion, we'll put it on the board meeting for the next one. That'll help, because then we don't need to discuss any further. We'll take a vote. Deal?
I think it's time to call the question, I mean, I think we've all
We can't
made
hear,
a good
right?
point.
Yeah.
Right, no,
We don't really
Yeah.
have I mean, I'd like to see some
we make a
proposals
motion?
and some actual alternatives.
Well, that, we,
Which I asked
we'd
when
be
we
more
first discussed
discussed.
this, can we see how other places do it, to get some ideas of how other places do
you
it?
do understand that would be another long discussion, and you've just made your point that you do not want to waste any more time on this. So I'm asking you can always make a motion.
I can't, because we have an agenda item for
I'm
action.
saying the next meeting.
Oh, to close the meeting.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
next meeting.
Okay,
like-
then I will write up a proposal for what I think is the best. I guess each of us can
Yeah,
write
you
our
can-
own proposals for what we think is
I'm
gonna
happy
work.
to review something and put it in format and bring something back to the group. If there's, I'm ha-
You want to do this?
Yeah, if you want Rebecca.
If that's what-
Rebecca.
I would appreciate
Some
maybe a little
ideas thrown out.
something. I mean, I think that's the thing is if, what I'm hearing is standing committees meet because the work, you know, you wanna get through the agenda, which is great.
Yeah.
So, but I'm also hearing you wanna change what the committees are, so that would be another level of proposal, or we'd have to change the ordinance, which is fine, we can totally do that, but then I think that should be laid out in front of us about.
But to get something started, I like what
Go, we can get
Rebecca
going.
said, let's go with what we know
We got it.
in some ways,
So
because if
we're-
we're gonna change everything and then have all these multivariables, then we don't, I would say, let's start there, we can revisit this, but
We need to vote. So if anyone has a motion that they'd like to make and a proposal that they'd like, if you want to submit it to Rebecca ahead of time, please do that.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can always make the motion on the floor. But we do, if we're gonna schedule it, we need a time frame too, because I understand trustee Menta's concern that we'll continue talking. So we'll give ourselves 15 minutes for discussion and we'll vote.
And just from the new trustee perspective, to the extent that you get stuff to Rebecca and it's there early and we can review it, that would be helpful, because again,
Yep.
I don't have the type of background that you have, so it'd be really helpful to do homework before.
and we should also provide it to the staff so they can provide comment, because I know a lot of things, but I don't know everything. And so they can also chime in and perhaps have some constructive.
I just want to say, I think it'd be really valuable exercise for everyone to take a recent agenda and like go back a couple of years and look at the agenda and how, and maybe say, okay, here are the items, how would I organize this into an agenda with committees, whatever, and look at how it used to be organized. So it might be really helpful to just pick a meeting and look at the,
Sure.
look at the subjects.
I could send those out to you guys. Or just some examples, if you have one in particular that you want, let me know, but if not. And then, we could set a conclusion towards maybe like the first of the year, or not.
Next meeting, we're gonna vote.
Okay, so by like
First
by the
year.
second, January 2nd, now don't spend all of New Year's Eve preparing your proposal.
I'm going home right now.
Is there a motion?
That is very quick. To adjourn? You're saying
So-
motion to
so-
Well, the next meeting is
It's
January
January
7th.
When's the meeting, second and seventh?
7th. So we would need it in here the week before so that we could compile, redistribute to board members, and then also review. Yeah, I wasn't.
I need a motion.
We do need a motion.
Okay, to adjourn.
In the meantime, though,
All
if you have
those in
any
favor, say
feedback,
aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.